Welcome to Saturdays at 7, Christian Scholars Review's conversation series with thought leaders about the academic vocation and the relationship that vocation shares with the church. My name is Todd Ream. I have the privilege of serving as the publisher for Christian Scholars Review and as the host for Saturdays at 7. I also have the privilege of serving on the faculty and the administration at Indiana Wesleyan University. Our guest is Cheryl A. McConnell, president of St. Joseph's University. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure to be here.
As you advanced in your career, the need for ethical leadership has emerged as one of the issues most important to you. I want to start by asking, why is that the case, and how do you recognize ethical leadership in the age in which we live?
So it's interesting when you think about ethical development of an individual, and it often goes back to family roots, disciplinary roots, or something happened in an individual's development where they grew this sense where ethics was really important to them. To me, it has a disciplinary base. My discipline in college and my undergraduate degree and my master's degree is accounting. And in accounting, there is a strong code of ethics, and there is a strong need to have accountability, honesty, integrity in what you do. You know, I think it's a real formative time in college, which is one of the reasons why I think it's so great about what we do as Catholic universities, is to instill that sense of ethics in individuals, whether they're of the Catholic faith or no faith, is that sense of ethics and importance. And so for me, that's where it developed. And so I have carried that with me throughout my career. Even I was about 3 years working as a CPA, and then I translated into higher education. But it's been important to me in higher education as well. And I think we're all leading, and we're all leading all the time. And so people are watching us. And, behaving ethically, being honest, taking accountability for when you're right and for when you're wrong is a real important thing for me as an individual. And I think that it's served me well throughout my entire career.
Yeah, thank you. Would you be willing to share a story or two that highlight the difference that ethical leadership can make and does make in higher education?
A story back when I was a junior faculty member. And for those of you that may not know what a junior faculty member is, it's an untenured faculty member. So you're on a tenure track, but you're not yet tenured. And most of the time, people that are untenured but on a tenure track are very careful about what they do and what they say, because it's difficult, right? You can get crosswise with people. I remember a particular case where I was in the business school, and we were meeting and we were talking with an individual about their performance, and so all the faculty members were talking, and they were having an open discussion with the individual there in the room about challenges in this individual's performance. As I was sitting there listening to this, I thought, wow, this is all kinds of wrong. This is all kinds of wrong. And why are my tenured colleagues not saying anything? And why is no one else standing up to this? And it went on until I could not take it anymore. And I said, time out. This is wrong. This is absolutely wrong. What we're doing here, this conversation that we're having is wrong. And so that's an example of how important it is to call that out and to stand up for what's right, even when it can put you at risk. So that's an example of when I would have done it, and I was very thankful that then other people it emboldened other people to stand up and say, yeah, you're right, this is wrong, and we need to do this a different way, and let's terminate this right now. And boy, the poor woman was in tears going through all of that. We were just wrong.
Yeah, ethical leadership is often most readily recognized in moments when there's sort of an acute point that's sort of comes to the surface, someone's feelings, or perceptions of their value in the vocation might be called into question in terms of what you're just talking about. How do we then also benefit from ethical leadership when it's exercised by our colleagues in even mundane circumstances and circumstances that may not get noticed or may not register, at least immediately?
Yeah, I think when you think broadly, I think we often look at national leaders or world leaders and say, wow, this is when they exhibited something that really was important. And I think that's what you're talking about. I think in organizations, though, I think those moments are rare. And I think what is far more common is individuals that are doing things on an ethical basis that need to be recognized in the moment and every day. I encourage all of my cabinet members to do that on an ongoing basis. When I see it, call it out. And it is that everyday leadership that is the most important thing to do. So I'm sitting here on beautiful Hawk Hill campus in Philadelphia. And right outside my window, tours are going by all the time. And I see faculty members that are going to class, but pause and have a great conversation with a potential student. And they don't have to do that, right? They don't have to engage with them. They could have their nose down. But really, the mission of the university and the importance of the development of the individual is every day for them. So they're doing it. And then the next time I see them, I will say, you know what? I noticed you took the time to do that. Thank you for taking the time to do that. So it's recognizing it when you see it and recognizing it at every moment, whether that is walking across the quad and picking up trash as you see it and not just letting it go for someone else. We're all leading, and we're leading all the time.
Yeah. How can we then attune ourselves to more readily express our appreciation for these forms of ethical leadership that are exercised in these small moments, moments that, may otherwise, I'll admit, escape me, in terms of how I go through the paces of my day?
So Jesuits have a process, and probably other faiths do as well, about an examen. And that is a daily examen, and I do it absolutely daily, whether it's first thing in the morning or whether it's before I go to bed at night. And it is essentially saying, when was I at my best? When was I at my best today? And what led me to be at my best? And recognizing that within the context of everything that happens during the day. And what am I grateful for? What do I have the opportunity for? And then when was I not at my best? And then how do I put my mindset right? How do I put my being right for the following day so that doesn't happen again? So how do we do this and express that kind of gratitude and recognition? You put it in those daily reflections. And so for me, it's like when I do my examen at night or in the morning, help me see the goodness. Help me see and recognize the goodness in people throughout the day. And then bring that up in the conversations, whether it's with my vice presidents or whether it's with my team that I see walking around, is inserting that throughout the day. So it becomes a practice. And that practice is the most important part.
Yeah. Are there other practices when we think about the moral formation of the next generation of leaders in higher education that you would also seek to include or that you would also encourage?
Yeah. When we think about the development, and here I'm going to talk about the development of traditional students from the ages like 18 to 22, because quite a moral formation time right there. Even though we do development for shorter term and we do graduate work and all that, I'm gonna concentrate on that 18 to 22. Jesuit pedagogy has, and it's called Ignatian pedagogy. It has a practice where an individual, as a faculty member, goes into a situation and they say, I am going to, first of all, understand the context of what I'm walking into. And then I'm going to engage with the difficulty of the situation, reflect on it, and then purposefully turn to action. And that's an Ignatian pedagogy cycle. Let me give you a story. When I was a faculty member, first time, I was in faculty orientation, first year. And I was at a Jesuit university in Kansas City. And of course, I come in as an accountant. And we're going around the room introducing ourselves. And one of the questions was, what do you hope for your students? Well, my response was, I want to have the highest CPA exam pass rate in the state, right? We're a very competitive person, really all in quality and the rigor. At the break, one of the Jesuits pulled me aside and he said, Cheryl, is that all you hope for your students? And I was like, okay, I think I need to listen to this. this is a good lesson. Of course, it's not all that I hoped for my students, but that, coming from a corporation and coming from a business standpoint, that's what I valued the most. So what did that teach me? It taught me that this kind of formation is so much more important. And not that the professional success isn't important. That's table stakes. Of course, we need to do that. But the moral formation, the service to others, the development of the individual on a holistic basis to be able to serve the world is more important. And quite frankly, Todd, I feel like that's a sense of worship for me. It's the way I'm serving God, and the way that I'm worshiping God is by being true to this, being true to the mission, and being true to reflecting the way that we develop individuals holistically.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to transition now to asking you about some biographical details. So we're going to go back to that time, even before the time you were a junior faculty member there. But you earned a bachelor's and master's degrees in accounting from Wichita State University, and then a doctoral degree in higher education from St. Louis University. And as you've mentioned, you're a certified public accountant, but you haven't mentioned yet you're also a fraud examiner too. So some of us might be a little nervous now going through this conversation as a result, in terms of what you know or what you can learn to know. But at what point did you discern accounting would prove to be an important component in your vocation?
So you go back, and I have these conversations with potential students all the time. What are you interested in? Where do you see yourself going? When I went to college, I did not see myself becoming an accountant. In fact, I was pre-med. I was pre-med until my first anatomy course. It is not surprising that after that first anatomy course, I went running to my academic advisor's office and said, okay, get me out of here. What are some other options here? And so I went into business, and I found that the accounting courses were as natural to me as breathing. One of the challenges, though, is that people often think of accounting as black and white. They think of accounting as only the financial reporting aspect of it. And accounting is actually quite rich. And it's rich in that there's areas of financial reporting, but there's also areas of fraud examination. There's areas of managerial accounting, which means how to help organizations make really good decisions, not based on financial reports, but based on costs and cost analysis. So all of those were really important. And I found that as I entered higher education, it was mostly important for me to help students understand how to use financial information to make really good decisions that helped organizations meet their mission, move forward. And it is not black and white. In fact, it is so many shades of gray that I think that's, again, where that ethical point came for me, is to be able to educate students within that context and then also really help organizations succeed.
And perhaps that's the answer or an answer to this question in terms of, in what ways does accounting contribute to the common good?
So I think I remember when I was interviewing for president and provost here at St. Joe's University, there is a natural hesitance for individuals when they know that I have accounting degrees, that I'm going to look at things through a financial lens. And that's the only lens from which I would approach problems or approach things. And there's no question that again, data and economics model of higher education, natural to me is breathing. But I haven't been a practicing accountant for 35 years. I've been a higher education professional for 35 years. And that's the lens from which I make decisions now. But that's based on that foundation of what accounting and economics comes to bring to a culture. An organization cannot be successful, and you've heard the phrases so many times, no margin, no mission. You can't be a sustainable organization without being a stable organization. And so accounting is one way to help individuals know how to make those decisions to help it be financially sustainable. Whether it's a nonprofit or whether it's a for-profit, the really important thing for me was always to educate individuals for making those ethical decisions and for building those decision-making processes that put the financial questions within a context. Because the thing that makes the most financial or profitable sense may not be the right decision. You need to understand the fullness and richness of that. That's where I think accounting done right really contributes to society.
Thank you. You mentioned you've been in higher education now 35 years. That point in time when you made the transition from practicing accounting to higher education, can you explain a little bit more about the discernment process that led you to make that transition?
Yeah, I worked for one of the largest accounting firms in the world, and they had a training center in Chicago. And at one point, when I was 2 years, I think, into my CPA work, they asked me to come down and train new staff.
Mm.
So when I went to the training center in Chicago, they did some really great work. They videotaped individuals. They helped you understand how to train new staff and how to facilitate discussions. And I remember going through that process and thinking, wow, this brings me joy.
Mm.
This brings me more
Yeah.
satisfaction than doing the actual work. And
Yes.
so I knew at that time, this is something A, that I'm good at, and B, really feeds my soul and really could make a difference. So it was at that time that I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to be open to opportunities now for teaching and education. And so that's when I started pursuing a different path for
Yeah.
myself and
Yeah.
started out in becoming an accounting professor.
So one of the major accounting firms then that also had a training center in Chicago, it sounds like Arthur Anderson.
It
Uh,
does. Notice how I didn't mention that name right away?
oh, well, at one time, that was what it was, perhaps most well known for was the professional training that they would offer to their employees and use as a move of encouragement for them.
It was also a highly ethical firm at one
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And the reason why I don't mention the name now is because, of course, they went out of business for doing something unethical.
Yeah.
I wish that I could tell you that I foresaw that coming.
Mm.
Looking back on it now, I could see seeds. I
Mm.
could see seeds of a relentless pursuit of profit at the risk of some decision making. But all in all, I mean, the roots of my work there, the roots of my education there and development there was highly good and highly ethical. I think it's a great story though about how organizations can lose their way.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you. Would you describe then, in addition to that experience you had at the Arthur Anderson Training Center, what sort of intrinsic joy you derive from working, say, in an educational setting, and in particular in a Jesuit educational setting?
So when I looked for positions, when I knew it was time to leave my former institution, I had been there 30 years. I knew I only wanted to go look at Jesuit universities.
Mhm.
I believe in how they do the way that we do education and how important that was. But the intrinsic joy in doing this kind of work is to see the transformation of an individual and see the differences that you can make in an individual's life trajectory, even if it doesn't go into accounting. I mean, that's not the be all end all. It is taking an individual and helping them achieve their full potential.
Mm.
And that's why I talk about how, to me, it's a form of worship, because if you don't take that perspective, you are diminishing God's good world
Mm.
by that individual not becoming the most of what he or she can be. So that's the joy, is being part of that journey, part of that everlasting spiral toward goodness and toward making the world what it can be and what it's called to be.
So over the course of that career then you've had in higher education, you mentioned the other institution. That was Rockhurst University in the Kansas City area. And then you came halfway across the country, depending on one's perspective, all the way across the country, maybe from Kansas, as if California is not out there, but yes, middle way, to Philadelphia then. Would you talk a little bit about mentors that poured into you as you made the discernment process, in terms of a faculty member, but then also as an educational administrator and leader?
Yeah, the strongest mentor. I learn how to lead by watching other leaders,
Mm.
right? And one of the best leaders that I ever saw, and he's on my board of trustees now, is Father Tom Curran. He was president of Rockhurst University when I was there. And what I saw in him was an incredible dedication to the mission, and that he would do several things. He would engage with students. He would lead by example. And he always said, judge me and my success by the foundational elements of the university and the consistency with mission. So he had that voice and carried that voice of the mission every moment. And that's how I learned to speak about that as the leader of the institution, that is my job, is to carry that voice and to carry the mission. So I would see him do that all the time. He's just an incredible, incredible man. Another mentor of mine, her name was Anita Salem. And she was a dean at the time, and then she was a Carnegie Scholar.
Sure.
And we had an initiative about the Carnegie Foundation about scholarship of teaching and learning. And I remember talking with her many times about that as I was involved in the leadership of that, and talking about the challenges that I had as an untenured faculty member or then a tenured faculty member that was taking on additional responsibilities, program director, department chair, and all of that. And then, keeping that research vibrant and keeping those investigations vibrant. And I remember to this day, and I tell it to people to this day, she looked at me and she said, Cheryl, when you decide it's important enough to do, you will find the time to do it. And she said, and when you write is when you learn. And so I have said that over and over and over again to people when they have come into my office about, wow, I'm really struggling with this. I don't have time to do this. When it becomes important enough to you, you will find time. I have a colleague here, and she's lovely. Her name is Amy Tarosky. She has a conversation with herself every year about what priorities do I want to set and what do I have to break up with. Love that concept, right? Because you can't do it all. And so you have to say, well, what are my priorities and how do I do this? And if this is a priority now, how do I fit it in? And how do I make it important enough to me so that I do it? So that was great mentoring advice that I received through the years.
Yeah. Are there any authors then who have proved more formative to you than perhaps some others in terms of how you've come to understand your sense of vocation?
There are three. One is Kevin O'Brien. Two of them are Jesuits, Kevin O'Brien and Jim Martin, Father James Martin. Both of those are wonderful. They guide my spiritual life. They are helpful in the habits of reflection. So both of them are ones, and over my right shoulder here is the one I'm currently using for meditation. It's Father Kevin O'Brien's. Another author, though, is David Baccarato. Check me on that last name. We can find that. He wrote a book, and it's quite dated now, probably 20, 25 years old, and it's called Defining Moments. And it's about the challenges between two competing rights. So it's not right versus wrong. It's when the challenges are really difficult. I wish I could tell you that the ethical analysis was pretty profound, and it's not that I didn't find the ethical analysis particularly profound, but what I found really profound in his work on that defining moments is he went through three examples. One was a personal ethical dilemma. Number two was an individual organizational dilemma, where an individual had competing rights for an individual at work and then the work itself. And we often call that the difference between cura apostolica and cura personalis. I mean, dealing with those competing rights. I have a responsibility to the individual and I have a responsibility to the organization. And so that was his second example. The third example was someone in a position of leadership that had a responsibility to a greater good or a greater society. I've always reflected on that, in that, particularly now that I'm president of the university, that I have those dilemmas of number two and number three, and growingly those dilemmas of the number three is that the work that I do really contributes larger to the world than just from St. Joseph's University.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I want to ask you then about the portion of time you spent at Rockhurst and how your sense of vocation developed there. Faculty member, department chair, dean, those years when maybe you were, trying to do even more as a junior faculty member. How did that shape, sense of vocation and how it was shaped take place? In particular, as you made the transition from full-time faculty member to faculty member and administrator.
So I have the traditional background of starting out as a faculty member and then taking on those additional administrative roles, and that often happens with female faculty members, but it can happen with all genders. So again, program director, department chair, associate dean equivalent, and then stepping in as dean. But in almost all of those cases, I didn't pursue the path for myself. I was asked to do so. I was asked to become a department chair. I was asked to become a program director. I was asked to become faculty chair that evaluated faculty members in the universities. And I was asked to step in as interim dean when a particular dean left at the university. I wouldn't call myself a reluctant leader,
Mm.
but I didn't pursue the leadership positions.
Mm.
What I found is that after 6 months or so, I was waking up happier. I was intellectually challenged and emotionally challenged by the problems that were being presented. And I was always then at the point of, I can't imagine anybody else stepping in this position and doing the work. And that's when I would throw my hat into the ring. And I
Mm.
did that for when I went from interim dean to the full dean of the business school dean. And I remember my conversation with Father Tom Curran, and I said, I think I want to apply for this job. He said, great, do it, and you have to earn it, right? You throw your hat in the ring, but you're going to go through the same rigorous process. And that was important, right? I mean, you know that from being at a university.
Mm.
The individual that is selected has to go through that rigorous process to know that they are the right person to do that. So that is how I transitioned to the dean at the business school. And then I kept on intellectually wanting additional challenges. So I would go to my provost and say, well, what kind of special project, how more can I contribute? What more can I do?
Yeah.
Do that. And so I became associate provost and while I was in the dean position. I think the thing that about killed me is when there was a turnover in the dean of another school and I was dean of 2 schools at the same time. Yeah. So my philosophy is say yes when you're presented with opportunities. That was one that actually is important for me to have said yes, because I'm not sure I'd be sitting right here not having said yes there. But that was a challenge.
There may be a cautionary tale in that, because I was thinking when you were talking in particular about going to the provost and asking that person for additional, is there any ways you could be of greater service to the institution? What provost would say no to that? And they're
With Thorny,
I have 2 deanships.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. But, that kind of putting yourself, volunteering for that work is what gives you the experiences
Right.
that allows you then to be successful when you're ready to take that next step. And that for me was when my provost came to me. He said, Cheryl, you're ready to be provost. I'm not going anywhere. So let's find a good place for you, because this is what you're good at, and this is where you should go.
Wow. And even though that person meant that it was going to mean losing you,
Right.
in terms of service, gaining you as a colleague, as a provost of a sister institution, but losing you as a direct colleague at that institution, that's quite a gift.
I would love to be known for that here, and I think I do that here, is developing my own leaders here at St. Joe's. And then it's a gift that I have if they choose to go, because I have developed that next generation. It's a part of the process. We're developing students, we're developing leaders, that's our role for that.
That role as provost then is what brought you, despite my inability to discern geography well, halfway across the country to Philadelphia and to St. Joseph's University. Would you describe the process then that brought you there and how you went about assessing opportunities that were before you when you came to St. Joseph's as a new leader, but also as a new colleague?
There were several provost opportunities available. And so I interviewed for several possibilities. What I liked about St. Joe's is I liked that it was a challenge, but also the commitment to the mission was really evidenced by how it engaged with the greater Philadelphia community on a large scale. So, we have centers and institutes here that do tremendous work with the autism environment, with centers for addiction and recovery education, the Arupe Center for Ethical Leadership. And I wanted to be at a place that lived the mission in a way that was demonstrable and that then made an impact on the region. Believe it or not, the Kansas to Philly thing didn't bother me at all. Didn't bother me at all. Now, some of my colleagues said, "Oh my gosh, you are not going to like Philly." I like Philly a lot. I like Philly a lot. In the Midwest, people are very, very kind, and they're giving. They are in Philly too. They're just really clear about what they think. I like that.
My experience was none of those people were on the Schuylkill Expressway the same time I was in Philadelphia, but I'm in town, sure.
So there is a distinction between Philly driving. I have to say that. I was going to Center City today, and you just have to get your toughness on when you're merging on the Schuylkill and hear the horns. It's all there. It's all there.
No, and Philadelphia certainly has great neighborhoods and great restaurants and a long and distinguished culture there too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great place to be. I really love it.
Partnerships then, as you saw them, or experiences that were taking place within Philadelphia that could be enhanced in greater ways by forging relationships with St. Joseph's?
Yeah. So I arrived to be provost in June of 2019. And of course, doing the math, that the world shut down in March of 2020. So led the institution through, that really difficult time. But what also happened during that time is that the university had a strategic plan to look at partnerships, alliances, acquisitions that made sense. St. Joe's at the time had 3 schools: business, College of Arts and Sciences, and a School of Education and Human Development. We didn't have a large footprint in healthcare, and so we didn't have nursing, we didn't have occupational therapy, physical therapy. I was very familiar with those from my former institution. So the university was doing the right thing by exploring those. And so even during the pandemic, we explored those kind of alliances or strategic partnerships. And it turns out that within the last 3 years, we have completed 2 acquisitions of other universities. So St. Joe's now is about 8,500 to 9,000 students, and before it was maybe 6,000 students. And we've added programs and locations in the programs in occupational therapy, physical therapy, pharmacy, physician assistant, and nursing through the second acquisition. What's interesting in those acquisitions, too, is that they were acquisitions of secular institutions. They were not Jesuit, they were not Christian, they were not affiliated with any religious order at all. So it was interesting, even through the negotiation process and through the due diligence and vetting process, we were very clear about who we are and what kind of approach that we take to education. And so at the highest levels, with the board of trustees at those institutions and the presidents of those institutions, really valued what it is and saw very little difference between their missions and our mission and how we exhibited that. So I can tell you that's true from the leadership standpoint of both institutions, but that wasn't true necessarily throughout both communities, particularly the acquisition of University of the Sciences. A lot of individual students and faculty members saw a distinct difference between faith and reason, the Catholic faith and science. Yeah, and their whole name was University of the Sciences. There was such a misunderstanding between that, within Catholic and Christian universities. We don't make that distinction between faith and reason. Faith and reason can coexist, and it coexists all the time. So it has been really interesting as we have gone through the integration process and finding that opportunity to have those open discussions and having that open mission integration so that we more fully understand and embrace what we have to share.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The discernment process then that led you to embrace being appointed as president of St. Joseph's University. How would you describe that? And then what are your sort of near-term and long-term goals for service in that role?
So, similar to when I was dean at Rockhurst University, I was appointed interim president here at St. Joe's. And I was appointed interim almost 3 years ago. And true to form, I said, don't want the position, not throwing my hat into the ring. And yet again, 6 months into the job, while the search was underway, I kept on coming into the understanding that I was really enjoying it, and I really could not see someone else leading the institution that I loved, and understanding the mission to the point that the institution could still make that incredible progress, and then really praying about, do I have the gifts to give? So then threw my hat into the ring and went through the process to do that. So I'm in my third year now. And so I was appointed president then after in that search committee, and I'm in my third year now from interim, and then 2 years now as president. As I said, those years have been full of acquisitions and mission integration. And now, as we sit here and talk, I know that this podcast will live on, but now as we are alive and experiencing this moment, there's chaos in higher education at the federal level, and it's coming from all sides. So I think about this and let me distinguish between the kind of leadership that was necessary during COVID and the kind of leadership that's necessary now. Or as a provost, when COVID happened, it was you kind of have to have all the tools in your toolkit for leadership. When it starts, you have command and control. We had students all across the world. You've got to bring them home. You've got to keep your community safe. You've got to do all these things, and you had to take control of that. And then very quickly, as we learned that the crisis was going to last a while, then you open it back up, and you know that to be successful, you've got to be collaborative, and you've got to lean on the knowledge and expertise of others. And so as a provost, I put together 11 different working groups that had executive sessions about how the institution was going to respond and the choices that we make that balance the safety of the individuals, but yet also continues the education of students and their mental health through this really, really tough time. So I classify that as leadership through crisis. So when you're leading through crisis, one common enemy, you marshal all your resources for that. Within the next couple of years, this is leadership during a time of chaos. And what's happening now is that there is no one common enemy. It is coming from all sides. When we think about the challenges that are there, we've got challenges of immigration, the attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, the attack on research and the nature of what higher education institutions do, an attack on curriculum and about what we teach and how we should teach. I mean, it's coming from all sides. And so my job now and for the foreseeable future is to keep us focused, strong, and steady on what we do. So number one, you need to provide stability, and you need to really communicate to your institution that you are mission driven, that here's what you always believe in. And then you have to give them the encouragement to stay focused on what it is that they do. We cannot achieve what we need to achieve if we're distracted by all the chaos. Let me handle that. Let me give them confidence that I'm on it. I'm on our cabinet on it. You keep doing the good work that you do. And I will communicate with you when I can and when it's appropriate, but I'm not going to communicate with you every 2 weeks because it's chaos, right? What do I need to communicate? Strong and steady. I have a phrase that will be the title of our next strategic plan. And it's a phrase that I talk with my community about a lot. And it's always forward. And it's not always forward, period. It's always period, forward, period. And so that's the essence of really focusing on what are our foundational principles and mission that we will always, always, always do. And for us, it's the Jesuit charisms. It's the Jesuit mission, being a Jesuit university and serving serving the Society of Jesus and its apostolic preferences. But then forward thinking, forward moving. When Jesuits go into a new community, they don't come in and take it over, right? They don't evangelize and say, everything you've been doing is horrible. They accompany people through it. And so that's the always part, is that the always part of doing how we do the work, the accompanying of youth in a hope-filled future. And I'm using youth as anybody that's going through a degree process or a certification process of any kind. But then all Jesuits then are really clear-eyed about what the current nature of the world. And so that's the forward piece, is that you can't face the world that you wish it was. You have clear eyes about the world as it is, and you lead your institution through this world that is.
Thank you very much. Before we close our conversation, then I want to ask you about your understanding of the academic vocation, in particular, what characteristics or qualities might define it, and in what ways also, too, do the Jesuit charisms bring a sort of unique understanding to bear in terms of how you understand the academic vocation?
I think in my mind, it's changed over time. And I think of my understanding about the academic vocation 30 years ago is different from what I understand the academic vocation to be today. 30 years from ago, I would have said that my loyalty was to my discipline and to the advancement of my discipline and the sharing of my discipline. And you see this in the research. For many faculty members, they have a higher degree of commitment to the discipline than they do necessarily to an institution. That's changed to me over time because I see that, and maybe that's just a function of rising through an organization where you become a greater understanding about the holistic nature of what it is that you do. But I've been trying to work with my own community about this too, is that for higher education to succeed, we cannot be tied or moored to one concept of how it used to run, whether it's 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20, 30 years ago. There's been more change in higher education in the last 5 years than there has been in the last 30 years put together. So, my thoughts of the academic vocation now is to be an individual and be a leader that really has those clear eyes and can see where the institution needs to be and to see how higher education can be impactful for individuals now and in the future, not hearkening back to what is or becoming unsuccessfully moored in something that is there. I love, my favorite course in my PhD study was the history of higher education. And when you think back 100 years, there's nothing very much that's the same about higher education now than it was 100 years ago. Well, that's our job, is to look at the future, try to make sure that we're relevant now and in the future, while still having that always piece, which is that Jesuit part for us about care of the individual, the care of care of our common home. For Jesuit universities, we are measured as whether or not we are succeeding in supporting the Jesuit work and the apostolic preferences. For us, that's called the Mission Priority Examen, and that's how institutions retain their Jesuit sponsorship by the Society of Jesus.
Thank you. When seeking to exercise such an understanding of the academic vocation, then, are there particular virtues that you believe are most important to cultivate?
Honesty. And that goes back to the conversation we had at the first. Honesty, humility, I think is an important virtue. And I think that's the opposite of a vice that can get individuals in higher education into trouble, which is pride, false pride, or the lack of humility. In higher education, we are some of the most educated individuals. We stumble when we think we're the smartest people in the room. We're the only smart people in the room. we don't stumble when we open up our mind and our ears to additional perspectives. And with the open heart of learning from others and experiences, walking with them as companions. So to me, that's a real important virtue, is bringing that humility, bringing that accompaniment through that.
Yeah.
And then, the opposite of that are the vices of pride and excess that can get higher education individuals and institutions into trouble.
Yeah. Thank you. As we close then now, I want to ask, in what ways is the health of the academic vocation on a church-related university campus, such as St. Joseph's, reflective of the health of the relationship that the university shares with the church?
Yeah. Just to my right, down the street, about 2 houses, is our Jesuit residence. It's our Jesuit community, and Jesuits live there that serve the university, that serve the Jesuit high school here in Philadelphia, that serve the Jesuit K-8 school here in Philadelphia. And, we are sponsored by the Society of Jesus, and we do everything together. So one of the great things, for example, is that all 3 of our Jesuit apostolates here in Philadelphia do common board of trustee orientation training together. And so we say, well, what is it about being part of the Society of Jesus, as works of the Society of Jesus, do we share in common? And so we have a really robust discussion, and you really understand the richness of Jesuit higher education and Jesuit high schools and Jesuit, sponsored elementary schools, and what we're all in this together about. And then we split into institution-specific orientation.
Mm.
So it's that collaboration. It's seamless in that you can't think of a Jesuit institution without thinking of the work of the Society of Jesus and our 4 apostolic preferences. It's integrated in everything we do, from curriculum to experiences to hosting Mission Week, which is, just I can't even tell you how many hundreds of events there are during that time to really say how important it is in every single thing that we do. Yeah. It's so seamless within everything. It's hard for me to even imagine that we're 2 separate institutions, the community and the church, or I'm sorry, the community and the university.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Our guest has been Cheryl A. McConnell, president of St. Joseph's University. Thank you for taking the time to share your insights and your wisdom with us.
Thank you, Todd.
Thank you for joining us for Saturdays at 7. Christian Scholars Review's conversation series with thought leaders about the academic vocation and the relationship that vocation shares with the church. We invite you to join us again next week for Saturdays at 7.